Today I'm going to be sewing up a book sleeve and bookmark using fat quarters and the tutorial that we're in this month's SewHayleyJane magazine inside the boxes. Hello everyone, I hope you're doing really well and having a lovely day. Today I'm going to be doing some sewing with you. I'm going to be making the book sleeve and bookmark that we're in this month's rest themed magazine in the SewHayleyJane boxes. Tamlin, who is Sewn on the Tyne on Instagram and YouTube herself, puts together these tutorials, and I'm going to sew one up using the fat quarters that were in the boxes as well. So the fat quarters were really beautiful. They were called Green Vibes Only, lots of plants and things like that. So I'm going to be using those. So the first thing to do is figure out what size you want your book sleeve to be. And I am going to use one of my larger books in my collection. I've just finished reading this. It's called It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. Highly recommend it. Obviously, you want your book sleeve to fit a variety of books. So figure out what sort of size you want your book sleeve to be by picking a largish book to start with. And to figure out the width of your book sleeve and the piece of fabric you want to cut, you need to measure all the way around the width and depth of your book, like that. Add seam allowance and then an extra inch or so just for a little bit of ease, and then divide that by 2, and that gives you the width of the fabric that you're going to cut. And then height is nice and simple. Whoops! Just measure the height of your book, add seam allowance and an extra inch for ease, and that gives you the height of your piece of fabric. Move those over to the side. So we're going to start with the book sleeve, and you need to cut out 2 pieces for your outer, 2 pieces for your lining, and then 2 pieces of wadding or batting in the same size. There are loads of different types of batting or wadding. This is just the type that I have with me at the moment, but if you don't have any batting, you could also use some scraps of sweatshirting fabric or fleece or felt or something like that, anything with a little bit of bounce, just to give a little bit of protection. So that is all the pieces all cut out and ready to go. The next step then is to attach your wadding to the wrong side of your outer pieces. So you might have fusible wadding, so you can just iron it on. This I'm going to sew just all around the outside within the seam allowance. This type of wadding does like to spread as I sew. So I'm just going to sew along using the fat quarter itself as the guide, and then I'll just trim off any excess pieces. With this type of wadding as well, I tend to have the wadding on the top so that it doesn't get pulled in and chewed up by the sewing machine. So that's the first step. Once that's done, then we are going to attach the lining pieces to the outer pieces. If your outer pieces are directional, you're going to be attaching only along the top edge. If your fabric's not directional, you can do either one of the short edges, but this fabric, as you can see, is directional. It's got these flower pots pointing upwards. So we're going to put one lining piece on top of one outer piece and sew along that top edge, and then do the same again with the other piece, sewing only along the top edge. Open out your pieces and then use your iron to gently press the seam allowance towards the lining. So if you're using wadding, you're going to have to do this on the right side of the fabric, making sure that your seam allowance is pointed away from the outer piece and towards the lining, and then use your iron to press it flat. Next, place your long rectangles right sides together with each other, making sure that the lining pieces are matching up and the outer pieces are matching up. Start by lining up the two seam allowances, or the two seams, sorry, and pin or clip all the way around the outer edge, making sure to mark in the short edge of the lining piece a sort of a 2.5 inch gap where you're going to turn it all through. Next, you need to get your scissors and give your seams a bit of a trim and trim across the corners as well. So you just need to take across the angle of the corners like that, along all four corners. And that helps give a nice clean point when you turn it all through. Then I'm just going to trim down the seams a little bit as well, just to reduce some of the bulk. Once you've trimmed down all your edges and your corners, open up the gap that you left in the lining and turn everything through the gap. Gently use your fingers to roll the seams out, especially the bit where it's been padded, and then give it all a really good press. Making sure to press the seam allowance under, ready to close up the gap in the lining. Finally, just top stitch the gap closed. As this is going to be the lining which is going to be inside, it's not going to be super visible. So if you want, you can hand stitch and very delicately close it up so that no stitching is visible. But I am just going to do a little line of top stitching along the top. Lastly, push the lining inside the outer piece, like so, making sure the corners are all pushed through and making sure that the seam line that you've got between the outer piece and the lining piece is rolled to the top. Give it a good press. If you want, you can do some top stitching along the top as well, but otherwise you have a book sleeve. Now we're going to go on and make the bookmark. To make your bookmark, you need to cut out 3 squares of fabric, 4-inch squares, 2 out of the same fabric and then 1 contrasting piece. Apply some fusible interfacing to the wrong side of one of your 2 squares and then your contrast piece, and then fold and press your contrast piece in half diagonally. Place it in the top right corner on top of one of your main pieces, then place the other main piece on top so that the right sides are together. Pin and sew all the way around, leaving a gap for turning through in one side. Once you have sewn all the way around the outside using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just clip across the corners to help make the points turn out nice and pointy, and then turn it all through the gap that you've left in one side, going quite carefully. It's quite small, so it's quite fiddly, so just take your time with it. You can use a point turner or a chopstick, as quite often what I use, or you can just use a pin to very carefully ease out the corners as much as you can. Give that a press and then top stitch all the way around the edge so that you close up the gap as you go. So there you have your finished bookmark that you can just pop on the corner of your page, and it's all done. And a lovely little book sleeve. This is going to be put away ready for next Christmas. I am going to be doing these YouTube tutorials every month with the idea that I'll be putting them away each month and building up a little stash of Christmas presents, and I think that is the perfect start. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give it a like and subscribe if you don't already, and I will be back next week with another video. Have a fantastic week, everyone, and I'll see you all really soon. Bye.